We're beginning a study of the life of Abraham, and we'll be using a study guide that I wrote earlier this year called The Life of Abraham. And let me encourage you, you can get this study guide through First Presbyterian Church. If you email me, we'll be glad to get it sent to you. But today we're going to start in lesson 1 that deals with an introduction to the life of Abraham. And let me read you from Genesis chapter 12. This is God's call to Abram. The Lord had said to Abram, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you." What a call. Imagine that. All the people on earth will be blessed through you. It's interesting that Jim Boyce, who was the longtime pastor of 10th Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia, great Bible commentator and theologian and writer, said this: "With the exception of Jesus Christ, Abraham is probably the most important person in the Bible." Now, why did he say that? Well, he says only 11 chapters of Genesis are devoted to the entire 2,000 years or more of world's history that preceded Abraham. But once Abraham comes on, 14 chapters now of Genesis are dedicated to the life of Abraham. Abraham was known as a great man of faith. And when you stop and think about all the great men of faith in Scripture, you could talk about Moses, who was the lawgiver, a Joshua, who was a great military leader, a David, Israel's greatest king, Daniel, an outstanding statesman, or Elijah, the great prophet. And yet, of all of the folks that we think about in the Old Testament, Abraham stands up as a great man of faith. And God's promise to Abraham was that he would be the father of many nations. Now, on the physical side, he became the father of the Jewish people through his son Isaac. But then on the spiritual side, as we'll see, he became the father of a great host of believers, including us, because Abraham becomes our spiritual father. Now, we'll see that a little bit later. In many ways, the very history of redemption begins with the call of Abraham. God set apart this one man, and from him, Israel became a great nation. Well, great sections of the New Testament explain the significance of Abraham. An entire chapter in Romans refers to God's dealings with Abraham to explain the doctrine of justification. That's chapter 4 of Romans. 2 chapters of Galatians refer to Abraham's life to prove that salvation is by grace through faith and not by works of the law, chapters 3 and 4. And one of the longest sections in Hebrews 11, that's the great faith chapter, one of the longest sections is devoted to the life of Abraham as an example of a man of faith. It's interesting that Abraham is called God's friend 3 times in Scripture. In 2 Chronicles 20, verse 7, in Isaiah 41, 8, and in James 2:23. And so Abraham occupies a very important place in the history of redemption. And in fact, he becomes the very embodiment of faith in the Bible. Now, while all those things are true of Abraham, we also have to see that there is nothing in Abram himself to commend him to God. In other words, he's a fallen person just like we are. God doesn't look down from heaven to find a person who has a little bit of faith. When he looks down from heaven, he sees that we're all without faith and that we're all sinners. And when we stop and think about that, you look at Abraham. Where was he when God called him? I'll tell you where he was. He was down in Ur of the Chaldees, and you know what he was doing? He was worshiping the pagan gods of his fathers. He was called by God out of paganism. And when he got this call, even after he received the call, there are times he was strong in faith, but as we'll see, there were also times that he was very weak in faith. He's a man just like we are. He was human like we are. There were times when he absolutely blew it, and there were times that he did extremely well. And I'll show you as we go through this study of the life of Abraham. Well, as we consider his life and in the future, first of all, we're going to be looking at his a whole history of his life. And let me encourage you to use your study book. Please stay ahead of these, and each week I'll give an introduction to each chapter, and then following that, you have the opportunity to work through your study guide. I'll tell you, it's amazing what we can learn from this man, Abraham. In fact, I've called this first chapter Father Abraham, father of the Jewish people, and he's our spiritual father by faith. So as we move forward, take your time, work through this first chapter, and I'll look forward to being with you on our next video.